Today down in the comments, I want to know what is your favorite movie that couldn't exist without another movie. It's very inspired by, that's either an homage to, or maybe it's just a complete ripoff of another movie. Hello, I'm Adam Caesar. This is Project Black T-Shirt, the channel where we take a new or a reissue horror movie and pair it with some horror literature that you'll enjoy if you like that movie. Be sure to like this video and then subscribe to see a bunch more videos like it. I try to post every week, and every week is at least one movie review and one book recommendation. Today, we're going to be talking about the Severin Films release of All the Colors of the Dark and their release of All the Colors of Giallo, which is a documentary about the Italian Giallo subgenre, movement, however you want to classify it. Italian crime films, Giallo films. During Black Friday, these two films, or these two releases, were kind of slipcased together in this very nice cardboard slipcase. But I don't actually think that's still available. I think they are both individual releases at this point. I think that was just for Black Friday. So here they are. Here's how they look by themselves in those new nice black Blu-ray cases that Severin's been using. So first, I want to talk about All the Colors of the Dark. Just recently, through plain happenstance, the channel has been a lot of the films of Sergio Martino. Every time I talk about one, I talk about how he's an incredibly underrated Italian director, and we prize Fulci and Argento over Martino, and I think that's a little bit, I think he's definitely one of the heavier hitters, definitely one of my favorites. He's made some incredible films, but one of my absolute favorites of his films, and one that I feel like as these movies have been getting releases or getting like new 4K transfers and Blu-ray releases, I've kind of been thinking like, all right, well, any day now, Arrow Video is going to release All the Colors of the Dark. They have to, because if they're doing all these other Sergio Martino movies, they have to be releasing it. But it's not Arrow, it's Severin Films, and they did an absolutely incredible job bringing this movie to Blu-ray. Might be my favorite of all the Martino films we've talked about on the channel, and my favorite of his films in general. And that's because All the Colors of the Dark, while it is a giallo, while it does play by mystery rules, while it does feel very much a part of that genre, it's also an occult horror film. It's also a kind of takes direct inspiration from Rosemary's Baby, direct inspiration from kind of the more paranoid cult thrillers, like there's this plot that's larger than me, and all these different people are coming together to do away with me, or to do something terrible to me or my family, and that's what Edwidge Fenwick, the beautiful Edwidge Fenwick, has to deal with in All the Colors of the Dark. She plays a woman living in London with her husband. Her sister's around. She's been going to this doctor. She's lost a baby. She's in a state where she's having these terrible nightmares, and some of them are kind of like the nightmares are like amplifying, and they're beginning to become like paranoid manifestations in her everyday life. And she's just trying to unravel this mystery of why she's seeing these things, what it has to do with the symbols she's seeing all over the place, what it has to do with these mysterious people, this person that's recently moved into her apartment building and is inviting her in for tea, which is a very London thing, but it's a very Italian feeling movie, and we do get some nice shots of London and some nice location shooting. Her husband's played by George Hilton. Susan Scott shows up in this. It's an amazing kind of who's who of Italian giallo cinema, written by Ernesto Gastaldi, score by Bruno Nicolai, which is very, like, you've heard this score used in other movies, or you've heard it sampled in other things. It's very, very famous, and Severin was nice enough to give the soundtrack CD with this release. Some gialli, as we talked about in the last video about Fifth Chord and Forbidden Photos of a Lady Above Suspicion, some gialli are more location shooting, some gialli are more stylized than others, but they're all usually very pretty movies, and they usually prize mise-en-scene or visuals over kind of logical or realistic or coherent set pieces of storytelling. But All the Colors of the Dark is kind of a perfect example of like having your cake and eating it too, because you have this dream world, you have these dream sequences where she's, you know, maybe being stalked, maybe being pursued, maybe it's all in her head, but you also get this real world, very kind of gritty feel to some scenes, very kind of almost like, again, to bring up Rosemary's Baby, almost like the apartment building in Rosemary's Baby, where it almost feels oppressive. This London apartment complex they're living in, that they even, for the final scene, they even go up to the roof and stuff like this. So they really maximize the location they've got. But to say any more about the plot would really spoil it, because while it is a mystery and it does work on a mystery level, what I love about All the Colors of the Dark, and it's a movie that I'd seen a while ago. I'd seen back in high school, and I completely forgot the ending. In my mind, I thought the ending was a lot more literal, a lot more kind of like Sherlock Holmesian, but the ending does kind of leave room for the occult, leave room for kind of a more folk horror, more paranoia interpretation, and I love that about the film. But there's a completely different alternate U.S. cut of the movie that has a different title. It's called They're Coming to Get You. I didn't get a chance to watch that yet. There's Color My Nightmare, an interview with Sergio Martino. Martino, he's appeared in a lot of these special features, and I along with the Arrow releases, and I feel like some of these might have even been shot around the same time. But he tells great stories, and he's like a really funny, seemingly warm interview. Ernesto Gastaldi talks to the crew. These are all like pretty significant interviews too. They're like they range, or they're all in the half-hour range. And George Hilton sits down to talk, and he's still looking good, George Hilton. There's also an audio commentary with Kat Ellinger, and I did listen to most of that while I was writing up notes for this review, and she's great. She wrote a book on Martino. She's very feels very capable to talk about this film, and it's a really nice commentary track, very loving. Now, All the Colors of Giallo, if you haven't heard of this, it's not a Giallo film. It's not a archive release. It is a feature-length documentary about Giallo. This movie's directed and put together by a guy named Federico Cadeo, and I think it was actually produced by Severin Films, by David Gregory, who runs Severin Films. It's a really, really, really nice documentary. It's an hour and a half long. It starts out kind of chronological, just talking about where these films come from. Their roots in the German creamy film, which is actually one of the things in the documentary that really stood out to me, is that I didn't know about these films, and I think maybe the later 50s and then the 60s in Germany, that were crime films, very similarly themed, very similarly put together. And then you kind of start with the first gialli, or what could be called gialli, and how they're formalized by Argento, and then the movie kind of takes a more linear path. Then you talk about each major director, and then you talk about their films chronologically, and then it starts over with another director. But it's well structured. It keeps your attention. It's anytime it starts to feel like it could get a little dry, a little bit informational, you pop in a star or a screenwriter or a director, and they'll share like a kind of like a humorous anecdote or something like that. And it does, in that way, it does feel a little Shaggy Dog, but at an hour and a half, it flies by. It feels really informative, even as someone who likes to think he knows a little bit about this stuff. There was tons of stuff I didn't know in it, but very interesting, very well put together. A lot of great clips, and a lot of like more obscure things mentioned that don't normally get mentioned when you talk about this subject or Italian genre cinema in general. But that's not all you get in this disc, and it almost feels like, in a way, the feature-length documentary is just one piece of this kind of like puzzle that this set is. The set is a CD sampler. It's got kind of like a greatest hits of Giallo, especially formulated for this release. The CD is called The Strange Sounds of Bloodstained Films, which, great title. And then it's 2 Blu-ray discs, the documentary, and then 4 hours of Giallo trailers. It just plays like a trailer reel. You can either play all, you can select a trailer, or you can watch the whole thing with Kat Ellinger's commentary. And then on the other disc, the second disc, is 90 minutes of trailers for the German creamy films. It's Krimi, not like creamy like Oreo filling, creamy like crime. And then there's a not feature-length interview on there with a historian to kind of give some context to these trailers and what you're seeing. But this is stacked. This is stacked. Between these two releases, and I'm going to be completely honest, I watched the feature films on both. Between these two releases, I probably only watched about half of the extra features that Severin has packed into this set. And like I said, it was originally sold during Black Friday as a set, but you don't need to get it as a set. For the kind of casual fan, if you're just looking for films, if you're just looking for a movie, Sergio Martino's All the Colors of the Dark, I would say this disc is an absolute must-buy. Like everything I talk about on the channel, I'll put the links down in the description. But I would say this disc, absolute must-buy. It's one of the best Giallo, a cross-genre Giallo, which is really rare. And I absolutely adore this movie. If you want to know more about the genre, especially because I've talked about it so much on the channel, I know some people have been chiming in the comments like, oh, I don't know about a lot about these films, or I haven't seen as many of these films as I'd like to see. All the Colors of Giallo, they do give a spoiler warning at the beginning that they spoil some of the films, but they don't really. They spoil maybe, they spoil like Bird with the Crystal Plumage. They spoil very few of the movies they actually talk about. They show some nice clips. Gives you a really good list of films to check out. I found myself writing down stuff while I was watching it, being like, oh, you know, this genre has literary roots, so I want to write down the names of some of these authors. I haven't seen some of these films, so I wanted to put them on my list to definitely check out. A really, really good resource. And then all the trailers are just, it's just awesome. It's just incredible if you're a writer like me, if you're someone who works and can work at the same time when they have the TV on. There's probably nothing cooler, or like background of a party, is just throw that 4 hours of trailers on and you're kind of set for a long time. But great release. They work really good together. They feel like companion pieces, so I see why they package them like that. But if you only get one, I would get All the Colors of the Dark. Both of them are great, though. Today's book recommendation, I'm going to stay really, really on brand with the movie recommendations. This is Giallo Fantastique. It is a fiction anthology edited by Ross Lockhart. Short stories by 12 different authors, myself included. I have a story in here. This came out a few years ago, but I'm really, really proud to be in this book. Garrett Cook, Michael Giuseppe's, John Langan. John Langan's story in here is amazing. Brian Keene. Oren Gray, who we've talked about on the show before, his collections. You'll find a lot of further reading when you dig into these stories, and you're like, oh, Oren Gray, I got to check out his other thing, or John Langan, I got to go check out his novel, The Fisherman. It's a great introduction in that way, and it's just a great companion if you're watching all this Giallo stuff. If you're melting your mind with these Italian films, it's perfectly themed reading to go along with digging through these like 16 hours of footage that's on these discs. So highly recommend that. There's a paperback and there's an ebook. I'll put the links down in the description. I'm Adam Caesar. If you've liked this video, please subscribe. If you want to learn more about me or my books, I have a link down below to my website where you can sign up for my mailing list, get a free short story and a novel sample. Go check out my stuff. I've also got audiobooks, all that other stuff to keep your bloodlust sated. And I will see you next week with another movie and another book, and probably multiple movies and probably multiple books, as I usually do.